Hey, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the one, the only, the Fantasy Master Lothario, LABR winner last year, Gray Albright. Gray.
Hey man, what's going on? So last year I won my LABR league. It's a expert league, and I was the biggest brained expert. Huh? I outbrained everyone. I had that draft yesterday. We're recording this Monday, March 3rd, and I had that draft. I had this year's draft yesterday, Sunday. I'm pretty happy with my team. I have a pretty good team. Probably going to repeat. Okay. Sorry if you're also in the league. It's disappointing for you. I haven't posted my draft recap yet, so I'll leave it there with the LABR thing. Plus, we have about 300 outfielders to get to, so let's get to it.
Let's just jump in, Gray. 1 through 11 we have discussed. That is Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Kyle Tucker, Tatis Jr., Corbin Carroll, Julio Rodriguez, Ronald Acuna Jr., Mookie Betts, Jordan Alvarez, Jarren Duran, and Jackson Chourio. So we are starting with Tier 2. That is number 12, Jazz Chisholm, who we actually already covered. So we're starting with number 13, Brent Rooker, who is DH or utility for a lot of sites to start the season. He should get outfield eligibility at some point. I don't know really when that'll be. Last year, he went 39 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 82, 112, 293, 365, 562. You have him projected for 36 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 86, 105, 268. He increased his launch angle in Oakland, and it has worked wonders for him. He had not a random good month or good half. He hit 290 or above both halves of the season. The home run, the fly ball was within 0.3% between the halves. Among qualified hitters, he was 8th in barrel rate, 20th in hard hit, 27th in average exit velocity. So he hits the ball really hard. He hit it really hard consistently. I mean, what else do you want from him?
I would like him to also make me dinner occasionally. I feel like Brent Rooker isn't necessarily outfield eligible in a lot of leagues, so I'll put that out there. But I was saying this on Razzball in the comments actually today, and I also I think I've said this previously in past podcasts, but I love the A's hitting this year. I don't know if I'm like completely off base here, but I feel like a lot of people aren't as jazzed about speaking of the previous outfielder. A lot of people aren't as jazzed as I am about the A's hitting. That I feel like we're underestimating how good that park is going to be. I've heard people say that it could play as good, if not better, than Coors. Like, give me it. Give me that. Put it on. Whoa, just let it fall over me like the water in the Flashdance video. Very new reference. Just pull on the bucket and just pour on me. I love the A's. I love them. I don't know why other people don't seem to have caught on to this, and I fear this may be this may be short-lived. I don't know if it's necessarily going to continue like going forward. Once they move again to Vegas, I would imagine it will, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I think in Sacramento, Sacktown, as they say. I don't know who says that, but as they say,
really white people,
Sacktown, as really white people say, the Heat. I think the Heat alone is going to have that ball flying out of that park. And even if that isn't the case, which we'll see what the weather is like there, but even if that isn't the case, there's the lack of foul territory like what was going on in Oakland. It's so much smaller, so that alone should help Babbitt. And I would imagine, Brent Rooker, like everything is fantastic with him. And, he had a pretty high Babbitt last year, but as you mentioned, he hits the ball hard. And with less foul territory, possibly the ball just flying out of there at insane rates because of the heat and humidity, I really think the ball may just pop in that park, and I'm all in, man. I love the A's hitting this year. I'm not necessarily calling for them to do well with pitching. I don't anticipate that necessarily, but yeah, I mean, like Brent Rooker, what he was able to do in Oakland in that awful park last year, if he can somehow match or even beat last year's numbers, man, we're talking about like an easy top 30 player, just like easily. And, I know he's utility only in a bunch of leagues, so that might account for some of the ADP discrepancy between where I have him ranked in ADP, but I have him a good like 4 or 5 rounds before everyone else. Like I basically have him in a position where, like, I think I mentioned this at one point in my rankings or at, or somewhere else. I don't know. I say a lot of nonsense, but I do like say at one point that, like, if Brent Rooker isn't going off the board in drafts until say, 70 overall or wherever he is, which is just nuts. Right now he's at 66 ADP. If you're able to wait a round or two from where I have him ranked, but I have him ranked really high. I have him in like the top 25. I'm all about Brent Rooker. And so if you can wait like a round or two, wait a round or two. I mean, this is a guy who last year on the player rater was top 12 overall. Top 12 overall, hits the ball insanely hard, and is about to go to probably one of the best ballparks for hitting. So, like, yeah, man, like he's leaving a terrible park, going to potentially a great park. He was top 12 overall last year. I mean, I want Brent Rooker in every league. I would draft him like at worst in the top 50 if he's utility only. But definitely wherever, if he's going at 65 overall, I'm drafting him at 60. If he's going 55 overall, I'm drafting him at 50. If he's going 45 overall, I'm drafting at 40. Like wherever he's going, go $1 or a few picks before and grab him, because you absolutely want Brent Rooker this year in fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's going to be great. I think there was a little bit of a bidding war in our AL only auction as well for Mr. Rooker. I don't actually think either of us got him, unfortunately, because he went. I mean, again, it's not a secret. He's gonna be great.
The thing is with I would say the thing is with like me and you, we're in leagues where most people are hip to, like, good hitters and acquiring them. But I think a lot of people who are listening are probably in leagues where, they're more of, casual fantasy baseball people. And there's a chance, I think Brent Rooker could still be like, he's on ADP. He's going at 66 overall on NFBC. So those people know what they're doing. Like that's a good spot to get Brent Rooker. But I think in casual leagues, you could still get him at a decent price. So, aside from like our leagues, I think there's probably money to be made on the Brent Rooker ADP price tag for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I have him inside my top 40, so I absolutely love him. Well above his ADP right now. Number 14 was O'Neill Cruz. We've already talked about. Number 15 is James Wood. Last year in AAA in 52 games, he had 10 home runs, 10 stolen bases, hit 353, 463, 595, no big deal. Came up to the majors, hit 9 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 264, 354, 427. Had a 28.9% K rate, not great, but also had an 11.6% walk rate, which was very nice. Young projected for 26 home runs, 25 stolen bases, 89, 77, 270, 272. I mean, he has all the tools, Gray. He was top 100 in sprint speed. If you change the minimum to 150 batted balls, he was 16th in average exit velocity, 14th in hard hit rate. His K rate was high in July when he got called up at 33%. He got that down to like 26, 27% the rest of the season. I love James Wood. Like, it's hard pressed for anybody to get him in front of me if I'm in the right position in a draft to take him. He's going to be awesome, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. If you're watching this on YouTube while B-Don was talking, I nearly fell over. I swear to you, I'm not drinking. Yeah, I was actually, while you were speaking and I was falling over, prior to me falling over, I was looking up Jackson Churio's numbers in the minor leagues last year, previous year, just to see, it's not a apples to apples comparison, but I was looking at my LABR team that I won last year. Did I mention that? I might have. The team I won with, I got Jackson Churio in that league for $10. And I was looking at, and this year I got Junior Caminero, not to go too far off topic here, but I'm coming back around to James Wood. So I was looking at my the price on Jackson Churio, and I was like, wow, I was obviously in on him. I loved him, and I got him for a really good price. And so I was looking at his minor league numbers versus like James Wood. And yeah, it's not apples to apples. I think James Wood, unfortunately, I don't know if James Wood has I feel like he might be maxed on a little bit on his ADP versus what his value is. I'm absolutely drafting him. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to make this complete negative here. I like James Wood. I'm drafting him where he is in ADP happily. Hopefully there's some upside from where he's going, but he's sort of maxed out a bit with his upside versus where, potentially where he could end up at the end of the year. I don't know if we're necessarily going to see a top 20 overall year from James Wood, which is kind of what he needs to do in order to get to make some real serious value. He's going at 50 overall, which is fine. It's not insanely overpriced, but he also doesn't have to my mind at least, the Nationals do run, so that's good. And I think they will run him absolutely. But I would be shocked to see him go higher than maybe 25 to 30 steals. That feels like, the top edge of what he's going to do. And, I do think the top edge of his power is probably around, say 20 homers. He's currently, projections, taking me out of the equation, projections have him at around 2020. So if he does that, he's basically Jackson Churio. What Jackson Churio was last year is what James Wood will do. Now, I believe, I could be wrong, maybe because I was looking at the $10 price tag in my LABR league. I think Churio was going a little bit cheaper last year versus James Wood this year. So I think James Wood's a little bit higher, which means, expectations are a little bit higher, which is fine. I think he is super talented. I think he can get there. But I think you're looking closer at a, I would say, I don't know, 25 feels that's where my projections are at. That feels about right. And I think there could be a little bit of upside on the speed, But also, I think the downside is like, probably closer to 2020, 260. Like he does, I mean, he's like maybe a 270 hitter, but Jackson Churio felt like, he also, I mean, he hit 275 last year, but he felt like, 290 in the making. So I don't know. I mean, it's like they might end up similar, I guess is my point is James Wood could end up where Jackson Churio was last year, and which is fine, but that's kind of like it's sort of a push on value versus like a huge like uptick in, it isn't a great value grab. Like Churio, for instance, he was 48th on the player rater last year, and that's essentially where James Wood is being drafted. So it's like you're basically you're hoping to get money back. Essentially, you're looking for a push on value versus ADP, which is fine. And there might be a little bit of upside there, but it's like it doesn't feel as dramatic as as it could have been. Like last year, I feel like Churio was a little bit cheaper. Maybe I'm misremembering that, and because I saw his $10 price tag on my team that I won with.
I think the prices were pretty similar on Churio last year and Wood this year, if I recall. At least by the end of draft season, I think there was maybe a discount on Churio for a little bit, and then it's kind of like, oh well, he's definitely going to make the roster now, and he kind of got his bump. Just looking at our, the NL auction that we share. They both went within $1 of each other. So
for whatever it's worth, the league I was in last year where I got Churio for $10, we drafted yesterday, and James Wood went for $22. So
by the way,
whatever that's worth. Now.
The Churio was an absolute steal because he went for 25, I think. And the one that we share are NL only in the last year. So,
okay.
Yeah, that was an absolute steal. I don't know what the people in your league were thinking. I mean, it's always a little bit depending on when people get brought up into the draft. But, yeah, that's a little crazy. Regardless, well, let's move on. Number 16 here. I love James Wood. I don't agree that he's capped out in any way, shape, or form. I think he hits the ball as hard as literally anybody outside of like Aaron Judge and Yordan Alvarez, and he's fast. He's really fast. So yeah, I love James Wood, maybe more than you do even. And I think the only reason I don't have him in our CBS auction is because I had already bought 2 very high priced outfielders, and I couldn't spend all of my money in the outfield, unfortunately.
Here's a question for you, because there's 3 young outfielders. Most people have them Jackson Merrill, Wyatt Langford, James Wood. Most people have them in that order. I have them actually James Wood, Langford, Jackson Merrill. What order do you have those 3?
I have a Merrill, Wood, and then Langford.
Okay, so I like James Wood even more than you. It would seem.
I think if you want to go that route, but if we look at overalls, I think I got you. So I got him at 26 overall. I don't know where you slot him in at, but I don't know that you have him higher than 26 overall. Anyways, we're moving forward, Gray. Moving forward.
I have him at 35. Okay, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Into that guy that we just talked about, and really the next 2 guys, Wyatt Langford at 16. Last year he had 134 games, 16 home runs, 19 stolen bases, 74, 253, 325, 415, had a 20.6% K rate and a 9.2% walk rate. You have him down for 22, 26, 86, 83, and 267. Hit the ball much better in the second half. Line drive rate was up. Hard hit was better. Home run and fly ball obviously is better if you're doing both those things. Went from 23% soft contact to 12.4% soft contact. I think the question here is, does he continue to build, or is there a little bit of a slump? We've seen kind of the really good of Wyatt Langford, the middle, and the bad at this point. Like, is there a settling in the middle, or are we just peaking the rest of the way out?
Yeah, no, I think he's probably just barely scratched the surface of what he can do. I think, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like Bruce Bochy really likes to run much. The Rangers just don't run as a team, so that's unfortunate because, like, Wyatt Langford's speed is just insane. Like at one point in I think in the minors in 2023, he stole 12 bags in 44 games, roughly three steals, a steal every 3 games. So roughly, 50 steal guy, and in the majors, he couldn't top 20 steals. His speed is just insane. Like, if people aren't aware of how fast he is, well, get aware, man.
Him and Evan Carter both.
Figure it out. Watch a video or something. But watch some highlights or something, man. Yeah, I don't know. Bruce Bochy, Bruce Bochy is known for his ginormous head. So it is possible that he heard about the pitch clock like 2 years ago, and that thought is just jangling around in there. It's just like it's pinballing around his medulla oblongata, and just like eventually it's gonna land on some part of his brain that's going to connect to his mouth and tell Wyatt Langford to run. Hopefully it's a possibility, but it doesn't seem like it's a very strong possibility at this point, because the way he actually gets on base, like he gets on base a decent amount, and his lack of running, it just has to be like a team thing versus a Wyatt Langford thing. So unfortunately, I don't know if the steals are ever really going to get like above like where they were kind of last year in a dramatic way. He's capable of stealing 45 plus bags. It's just a matter of whether or not he's allowed to. So unfortunately, I think there's that capping his overall value. But he's also a 20 homer hitter, and he should, like, his BABIP was 296 last year. But, like I keep saying, he's so fast. He's an easy 330 BABIP guy. So he could hit 275 plus 2020. And again, going back to what Jackson Chourio did last year, that's sort of in the same, ballpark as what you got from Chourio last year. So, yeah, again, just another exciting young player who could potentially go 2020 with upside. The upside just kind of going to depend on whether or not he wants to run and how well he hits the ball. If his hard contact is good and he's able to make solid contact and get on base with a little bit better of a BABIP. Yeah, he could be, I don't know, I guess upside looks like it could be 27 plus homers, 35, 40 bags. Realistically, 2020 with upside.
Yeah, I think all three of these guys we're going to talk about here are kind of like 2020 with upside, and it's up to you to determine who you think has the most upside. I will say, as I was ranking them, and the reason that Wyatt's last for me is the team, because I just don't think they're going to let him steal, and I don't think that he's a significantly better hitter than the other two either. So I don't know that the bat is going to be such a bigger carrier, to put him over if the other two are going to be able to run more, which has been, again, Texas's approach, Bruce Bochy's approach recent years. And in fairness, Gray, he just kind of heard from the back of his mind that that stealing bases was bad from like the Moneyball era, like 7 years ago. So you got to give him time to process that and then get caught up on like what's going on now.
Imagine like a supercomputer but instead of it like electricity is like it's what the speed of sound and the way the way things usually move with a supercomputer. But instead, imagine there's a hamster inside of a supercomputer and just running on a running on a treadmill to get things moving. Just that's sort of. But then on that supercomputer, put 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and a Texas Rangers hat on top of it. That's Bruce Bochy.
Yep, those carrier pigeons inside the brain are working really hard, Gray. I mean, they do have Wyatt Langford and Evan Carter, who are 2 of the fastest players in all of baseball, and they don't really run. So it is going to be a mystery. Again, that's why I actually have Langford down at the bottom. If he was moved to a more run-happy team, if he was in, say Washington, like a certain Mr. Wood, I would feel better about it, because I think James Wood is still 50 because nobody's gonna tell him no.
Yeah, and also I think you agree with me then. Like, I mean, Wyatt Langford could steal 45 plus bags.
He could,
yeah. So it's like,
and that's not, but he could hit leadoff. Like I think he should. Like, there's a lot of things I think should happen in baseball, but they don't. They don't happen, Gray. So until that happens, like, fair. I kind of have to do what they do. I have to plan around them, unfortunately. Moving on, number 17, Jackson Merrill, who I think consensus actually has the highest, and I have the highest, but you have him the lowest, Gray, at 17 among these 3 very talented outfielders. Last year went 24-16, 77-90, and 292, 326, 500. You're projected for 27 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 88, 86, 294. Is a 17% K rate, a 4.9% walk rate. The second half was better than the first, and both were really good. In the battle of the Jacksons, the second half, Greg, because everybody kind of was already up and playing at that point. Churio went 310, 12-12. Merrill went 314, 12-6, and Wyatt went 251, 11-11. Again, you're just kind of picking your pieces there. 104th in sprint speed, 57th in barrel rate, 72nd in average exit velocity, and 80th in hard hit. So pretty much in line with what Wyatt Langford was doing, if not a little bit better on those numbers, except for sprint speed, where Langford is faster than everybody.
Right. Yeah. No, I think there's a reason why I have it. I have James Wood, Wyatt Langford, and Jackson Merrill. Like, I think they're all just it's basically 1A, 1B, 1C. But I think James Wood has the most upside, where just because the team where he is, like the Nationals aren't playing for anything, he can run as much as he wants. I don't think anything's going to stop him there. He could potentially, hit a bunch of homers. Like, I think everything is set up for James Wood to succeed. Wyatt Langford, as we talked about, I think there's the team dynamic is a little bit of a worry because, they just don't run. And Jackson Merrill, I feel like, is just basic. He's just kind of like, for me, he has the lowest upside, but probably the highest floor. Like, I think last year was a great year, obviously, 24-16, 292. I think, projections are basically saying, hey, he's going to repeat that. And I can't refute it either way. Like, I don't know if there's really the upside of the other guys. Like, we mentioned how, Wyatt Langford's upside could be insane. Jackson Merrill just feels like kind of like he's probably what he was last year, which is good. I mean, it was really good. I just don't know if there's really any upside from it. And anything, I worry there could be a little bit of downside in the batting average. Like there was, I don't know. I mean, he did hit well. There was very few strikeouts for a 21-year-old, only 17% strikeout rate. Like, he is incredibly talented. And like I said, this is a 1A, 1B, 1C situation where I love all 3 of them. So I don't want to disparage Jackson Merrill. I mean, we're in rarefied air here. This is like, these are guys going, for me, in the top 40 overall is where I'm drafting them, and I'm happily taking any of them. I just have them, as ranked for me upside wise. And I feel like Jackson Merrill just has the lowest of the upside, but if he comes back with a 35, 20, 290 season, it also wouldn't shock me. Like it's he's very capable of, building off of his season. He was only 21. He's still 21 until April. He's still very young. Maybe he builds on the power. Maybe he builds on the speed. The average feels maxed out, but maybe he even builds on that. I mean, like I said, he strikes out very little. So, yeah, I think he's the safest of the three. I also think he's probably the lowest upside of the three. So, but I love him. I love all three of them, really.
Yeah, I don't really agree with the whole upside part of the discussion here. I think that Merrill and Wyatt, because of my feelings about Texas' run game, I think their upside is essentially the same, with Merrill's average and just overall production feeling a lot safer. That's why I have him at the top. He also feels like a 300 hitter. I know that seems crazy, but I mean, he hit 278 first half. He had 314 second half. The worst average he had in any month grade, which is a month is such a small sample in baseball, and even the best hitters will have terrible months, was 259. Like, he is a phenomenal hitter. He hits the ball just as hard as Wyatt does. He's not quite as fast as Wyatt, but again, given the teams, like, I don't think either of them is stealing more than 25. That's why I have Merrill at the top. He just feels so safe. Again, I agree with you in regards to upside in that Wood is the highest, because I think he combines everything the most. If it all clicks, his hard hit is ridiculous. Like, he could hit, I don't know, 40 home runs if he just gets his launch angle up and stops hitting grounders. But all these guys could hit 30 plus. Anyways, these three are great players. We're disputing like minimal differences here that we have among them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to another fun outfielder, Gray, and that is Brenton Doyle, who comes in at 18. Last year had 23 home runs, 30 stolen bases, 82, 72, 260, 317, 446. You have him down for 25, 32, 80, 76, 252. He had a 25.4% K rate, 7.6% walk rate. Struggled at the end of the season, but was also kind of dealing with some knee and leg issues and a finger issue as well. He was 36th in sprint speed, 72nd in barrels, top 120 in EV and hard hit. Is it the fall off at the end of the season? Is it Colorado? Is it Nolan Jones? Why is Brenton Doyle clearly, I mean, for everybody, including us, at the bottom of this grouping? But like, his numbers last year would suggest he should be at the top.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is it's a little bit of the scar tissue from Nolan Jones. Maybe it's maybe it's a little bit of his drop off. I mean, you covered what the things that potentially could have people a little bit wary of him. I have him a good 25 picks in front of ADP. I think I would happily take Brenton Doyle anywhere. I mean, he went 23, 30, 260. He's in Coors. He's got, I mean, he just played 149 games. Like, this isn't no, and before, in the previous year, he played 126 games. So, I mean, I don't think this really feels like I'm not saying you're saying it, but if people are worried that this is like Nolan Jones part 2, Molin, like more? No, okay. This is like this is no Jones, Mo Jones. This is Mo Jones. I don't think that's really a correct comparison, because like Nolan Jones had played like, what was it, like a half year, and his strikeouts were insane during that. And everyone who looked at Nolan Jones with a in hindsight, it was like, yeah, that was obviously a mistake to trust Nolan Jones. I mean, I made the mistake. Don't get me wrong. I'm not above making mistakes here, occasionally. But I do think Nolan Jones, in retrospect, in hindsight, it was clear why Nolan Jones was not the person who he thought he was. Whereas with like Brenton Doyle, he has a season of basically 600 plate appearances and has done really well for a full season, and that wasn't his rookie year. He had a season already previously where he did well enough to give him the job last year. His rookie year had some issues, but last year wasn't his rookie year. Last year he had a 25% strikeout rate across 149 games. Like you can't fake that, So like he is, I think, safe enough to draft where I have, like, he's just as good as the other guys. Like the only real trouble, like in like reality, with his with his year he just had, I probably should have him above James Wood if we're just going off of stats. Like his stats are totally fine. I have him below because he feels a little bit more maxed out for what he can do, and also there is a little bit of a concern about his the very end of his year. But like you mentioned, he was battling some injuries. So, I don't have a problem with Brenton Doyle at all. I would happily draft him. I think if you have a problem with him because of the Nolan Jones snafu that caught you last year, this is not the same thing. It's not a fair comp to make with Brenton Doyle. Like he's fine. I think like his numbers look totally fine. Like 25% strikeout rate, 316 BABIP, 260 average. He's probably neutrally around those numbers, maybe a hair lower, maybe a 255, 252 hitter, but not dramatically lower. And anything, he could potentially be a little bit better on average. And the speed is totally there, and he's in Coors. So, 20 plus homers does not feel like a reach for him.
No, it doesn't. I agree with everything you said. I also agree with him being at the bottom. It feels like he is a little bit more maxed out. Just kind of, where he is. He's 26. The guys we're talking about are in their early 20s. Like they're still developing quite a bit. Whereas this is kind of Doyle hitting his prime section here. So yeah, I agree completely with what you said, and I'm very happy to have him on any of my teams. Let's move on to the next tier. Number 19 is Cody Bellinger, who I already talked about. So number 20 is Teoscar Hernandez. Last year had 33 home runs, 12 stolen bases, 84, 99, hit 272, 339, 501. You have projected for 34 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 81, 94, and 261. He had the lowest launch angle of his career. The average exit velocity and hard hit actually slightly down, but he had the best home run to fly ball in last 4 seasons. And he really, really wanted to stay in LA, Gray, and he did.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say his worst trait is negotiations. I wouldn't say if at the end of the World Series, if you're like, I want to be a Dodger for the rest of my life, and you're going into your free agency year, it's probably not good negotiation.
It's probably not the best way to go about things to get paid. No.
No. But I mean, he is in a great place. So I mean, if he's thinking about himself for fantasy, right on, man. I agree. He's in the perfect place. I think Dodger Stadium, it's been a while now, but it's definitely a launching pad. I don't know when it became that, but it's definitely a launching pad now. It is the ball flies out. I think it was when they put the humidors in. So the fact that he had his highest homer per fly ball does not surprise me. He's now a 32 to 35 homer guy with incredibly good counting stats because, he's in a great lineup. He plays, he stays healthy. Knock on wood with that, I guess. But for the last 3 of the last 4 years, he's been really healthy, incredibly so. Outside of like a junky year in Seattle, where Seattle's able to kill like Julio Rodriguez's power. I mean, Seattle can kill anyone's power. Outside of that year, Teoscar is pretty. No, I mean he's basically you could set your clock to it. I mean, he's so reliable when it comes to his stats. So I like Teoscar a lot. If you're in the if you're in the market for a 32 plus homer, 260 plus hitter with maybe 7 to 10 steals ish, and great counting stats, great runs and RBIs. So yeah, I like him for what he is.
I mean, he's just what he is. But it's really solid. The stolen bases last year were nice. I don't know that I expect that to repeat. There's kind of that point where the Dodgers were, despite all their depth and money, kind of injured and hurt, and they stole a little bit more during that time. Barring that happen again, I don't know that he's getting back to 12 stolen bases, but 30 and 7, 30 and 10, very good with all the numbers as you mentioned. Number 21, Lawrence Butler. Last year in 125 games, had 22 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 63, 57, hit 262, 317, 490. You have him down for 27, 23, 84, 67, and 269. He had a 23.9% K rate, a 7.8% walk rate. He was 41st in hard hit, 47th in average exit velocity. Kind of struggled first half, hitting 211, and then got it together in the second half when he hit 300 and dropped his K rate 10 points. I like Lawrence Butler too. I think he should go around all these guys, and I think in our leagues he does tend to do that, but I think there's some leagues where he's going to fall, Gray.
Yeah, no, definitely. It could be. I love Lawrence Butler as well. I think he's got, again, the A's. I mean, the park in theory should be much better. I think it's going to play really well. I think Lawrence Butler has surprising power. Last year, the 22 homers and 400, 412 at bats. I think, the speed could be shocking. He got caught 0 times in 18 attempts. It's just a matter of how much he wants to run. I think if he can, if we're back here and he is like a top 15 overall player with a 30 plus homer, 20 plus steal, 270 plus season, it would not shock me at all. I think Lawrence Butler is also again, a guy who I'm hoping to draft in every league, who I think I'm higher on than ADP by a decent amount. Again, I really like him. I'm a fan, man. I like these guys are going to be, it's going to be tough not to draft a bunch of outfielders early. It's going to be really,
it really is hard. Actually. I've been running into this problem, and I've had to kind of adjust around it a little bit, because I end up just wanting to draft all these outfielders, Gray. It's a great and awful problem to have.
Yeah. No, I know. Maybe if a few of them could take Jazz Chisholm Jr.'s lead and get second base eligibility, that would be really nice.
That or Mookie Betts, eligibility would be very nice.
It's like Mookie. It's like, can we do Lawrence Butler? Can we put those those clips on his eyes like in A Clockwork Orange and have him watch Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Mookie Betts play the infield? Is that possible?
Do we have random substitutions without actual playing that just move people into different positions just to help us out?
Am I
I think
taking
that's how Yahoo plays,
am I
actually.
taking the wrong thing away from A Clockwork Orange?
Maybe.
Am I learning the wrong things here? I don't think so.
Possibly, but we'll leave that for another discussion. Great.
Okay.
22, Spencer Steer. We already talked about him. 23, Seiya Suzuki in 132 games. Had 21 home runs, 16 stolen bases, 74, 73, 283, 366, 482. Young projected for 23 home runs, 15 stolen bases, 75, 81, 281. The K rate went up. He had his best U.S. Major League Baseball walk rate, 31st in average exit velocity, 24th in hard hit rate, 55th in barrel rate. He was really great when he was on the field, Gray. He just doesn't play a full complement of games ever.
Yeah, it's not hey ya, it's see ya. I was looking at
I shouldn't have laughed that hard. That wasn't that funny.
I should have. I actually was looking like I come at these players in the rankings I have expectations. Like I have, I have confirmation biases just like the next person, So I look at Seiya Suzuki and I just saw his name and I expected to be a little bit lower in the rankings on him. But then you look at his numbers and you're like, even though he only plays 135 games, he also gives you, 20 plus homers and 12 plus steals and hits 280. So it's like how negative can you be? Now if it's a deeper league where there isn't the ability to just go off of waivers and replace him when he does miss 30 games during the year, then maybe there's a conversation to lower him a little bit if you're in a deeper league like that. But I feel like, most people play in 12-team or 10-team mixed leagues. Most people are able to go to waivers and replace a guy. So I have no problem drafting Seiya Suzuki where I've ranked him. I'd happily take him, there. I think he's probably, until we actually see him stay on the field for 155 plus games, he feels maxed out with what he's producing. But at the end of the day, if he gives you 22 homers, 15 steals, and a 260 average, is he that different than, other guys who are ranked / drafted around him? No, not really. It's just, he's a good 10 to 20 runs RBIs lower because he's missing games, but he's still able to produce in the games when he is on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess if you're worried about anything, it's maybe the stolen bases repeating, but he has the speed to do it. The Cubs should be in a position to run. They may not run wild, but they're going to run whenever they want to, really. So yeah, I'm not really worried about it. His last year was his best contact quality year here in the majors. Everything continues to get better. So yeah, I like Seiya. Don't mind where he's being drafted at all. So let's move on to number 24. Riley Green last year had 24 runs, 4 stolen bases, 82, 74, 262, 348, and 479. Young projected for 27 home runs, 7 stolen bases, 74, 86, and 274. He had a career best strikeout rate and walk rate at 11% walk rate and a 26.7% K rate. He almost doubled his launch angle, and that helped with the power. 26th in barrel rate, 39th in average exit velocity, and 44th in hard hit. This was the Riley Green we were told about, Gray, the one who can hit the snot out of a ball. This was nice to see that the Tigers can't kill every single bat that runs through the program.
Yeah, you won't Torkelson Riley Green, I tell you that much. I think like Riley Green is he's a good example of what I get my one of my bigger frustration / pet peeves is like when a young player does well, as you mentioned, all the great numbers that you mentioned, he does well at 23. And then all the projections look at him as a 24-year-old and they're like, yeah, he's going to get worse. It's like, what? Why? Why? Like, it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe, but why? It doesn't, like, no one ever gets better when it comes to projections. So I don't know. Anyway, with that said, I like Riley Green. I wrote a sleeper post on him last year. I was happy to draft him everywhere. I'm absolutely in again. I think, another guy who potentially could outproduce even like I'm projecting him for the upper end of what I think he can do, but I think he could even surpass what I'm projecting him for. I have him down for 27 homers, 7 steals. He's got easy. I mean, he stole 7 bags in 2023 in only 99 games. He could easily steal 15 bags. I mean, he's got the speed to steal. Like, that's not an issue. And the power is still developing. So, like, I don't like I don't like Comerica, obviously. No one does. All their hitters are terrible mostly because of that park. But I do like Riley Green. He's like one of the few Tigers hitters that I'm really I'm excited about, and I think 32 15 275 isn't off the table for his potential possibilities. Realistically, I think is closer to what I have him projected for, which is 27 7 275. But somewhere in there is where he's going to fall, and I think he's absolutely well worth drafting where he's going in drafts right now. His ADP is 105 overall. I have him, I think, around 80 overall, so a good 25 picks probably before where his ADP is. So again, just another guy who I'm happily drafting before someone else gets to him.
Yeah, I'm not that high on Riley Green. I really like him as a baseball player, and if he played somewhere other than Detroit, I would be in on him more. I think the park, the lineup, the fact that they don't run in Detroit, like, oh, it all kind of hurts what he can do for our game. So as much as I love Riley Green for real baseball and would absolutely love for him to be in a Cubs jersey, I just don't love him for our game. If he gets into the right area for me, I'm happy to have him. But again, I don't know if the county numbers are going to be high enough to support it. He's primarily going to be a power and county numbers guy. And, if the power sits in the mid 20s rather than taking another step, which could certainly happen. He hits the ball plenty hard enough for that to continue to happen. But if it doesn't, like a 260 mid 20s home run guy isn't as exciting as some of the other guys that we're gonna talk about. But I completely understand. He is still young. He can grow. I may be completely off. We will see. Number 25, Anthony Santander. Last year had 44 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 91, 102, 235, 308, 506. Young down for 36 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 84, 97, and 244. His career high home runs at 44, 33 being his previous high. Sub 20% K rate, 8.7% walk rate, which was the best walk rate of his career. Hard hit and average exit velocity were actually down some, but did have the best barrel rate of his career. And only in a 225 BABIP, Gray. So there's potential that 235 actually could go up, or just that he was awful for a couple of months at a time.
I think I look at Santander and I basically see a poor man's Teoscar, but honestly it may not even be that poor. It could be more like a middle class man's Teoscar somewhere in making like I don't know, 65K a year Teoscar. Something in there. I think Santander is totally again Like I don't have issues with any of these outfielders. I think Santander versus like say a Suzuki or Riley Green or some of the guys above him, like you have to factor in that there isn't going to be any speed, so there's that, which is, it's fine. It just depends on your team build. I think if anything, Santander is probably, a better bet for power than a lot of guys. Like, like if you look at where, say, I don't know, say Kyle Schwarber goes in drafts, like Schwarber is going at 65 overall and Santander is going at 90 overall. Really, are their numbers that different? Maybe a 3-homer difference, like not really. And Santander has a better chance to hit for a better average. I think Schwarber maybe has more runs, but Santander has more RBIs. But that's kind of lineup, like where their lineup placement is. So yeah, I mean Santander and Santander also actually has outfield eligibility, which Schwarber doesn't have. So yeah, I mean, I don't mind Santander. If you need power, I'd happily draft him. I think, if anything, I think his sort of like, this offseason did him, I feel like it did him well, but I would say, like, I don't know if he's got anything to prove, but I don't know if I really buy into that whole like contract, anecdotal evidence of like, guys doing well before getting a contract and doing less well after. So maybe Santander has that, but that's just so anecdotal. Like I don't really see anything against him other than, as he gets older. Like I'm not in on Santander in like 2 or 3 years, but right now, sure, I have no problem with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything you would say against him is going to be completely just kind of, you're making up a storyline and kind of applying it to him. Maybe the contract year, I could see people, just like any human being, working a little bit harder, trying to make the money, but also that creates new habits. You get into better places. And again, it's very clear like where he's been anyways. He's a power hitter. I like him. I have no problem with him. And I might actually have him a little bit higher than you, or we're probably right in line with where we have him in the draft room. Number 26 is Brian Reynolds. Last year had 24 runs, 10 stolen bases, 73, 88, hits 275, 344, 447. Projected for 25 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 84, 87, 272. It's Brian Reynolds. You can talk about him if you want. I don't know what else needs to be said.
It's Brian Reynolds. I'll say this, that like you look at Brian Reynolds year after year, and he is way more reliable than a lot of guys who are being drafted around him, and not in a bad way either. Like 24 homers, 4 straight years, at least 24 homers, at least 10 steals the last 2 years, hit 276 for his career in over 3,300 plate appearances. It's pretty reliable. Like if you think about like Seiya Suzuki versus Brian Reynolds, Seiya Suzuki is a 21 homer, 7, maybe 12 steals. Say 21 homer, 12 steals, and 135 games. And Brian Reynolds is 24 homers, 10 steals, but in 150 games. So it depends on what you can get off of waivers on whether or not Seiya Suzuki really is better than Brian Reynolds. But they're basically the same thing. I mean, they're essentially the same thing. So yeah, I don't mind Brian Reynolds. I've actually come to appreciate him more, depending on it kind of depends on the build of the fantasy team, of whether or not I am, truly interested in Brian Reynolds for my for drafting. But he's, I think he's probably safer than people give him credit for, and also a hair cheaper in drafts than he probably should be, but not by a lot because he doesn't have a huge upside.
Yeah. I mean, if you get to pick 100 and he's sitting there and you need an outfielder that's going to return value, he's your guy because it's what he does. He's going to give you 100 to 70, value pretty much year in, year out. But like you said, there's minimal upside. So it just kind of depends on your build, depth of the league. In a 15-team league, that has a little bit more value that you can just kind of pencil him in for what he's going to do. Whereas in a 10-team league, he should go like in the 150 somewhere just because there's so much more upside that you can grab around him and find, plus value rather than just getting value. But yeah, I mean, you're right. He is great for what he is. I don't end up with him very often. But if you go very, very bold off the start, it can help to have a balancing piece. And sometimes I need that. Number 27, Kyle Schwarber. Last year had 38 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 110, 104, hit 248, 366, 485. You him down for 40 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 106, 105, and 231. And I'm going to ask Gray, do we, and I am including myself in this, drastically underrate Kyle Schwarber every year? Since moving to Philly on the player rater, he has been on the hitter player rater 12, 31, and 16. Vlad goes first and second round. Schwarber's been better than him on the player rater 2 of the last 3 years. Last year that Vlad was higher, they were 10th and 12th. So not a whole lot of separation. Why do we hate Kyle Schwarber, yet Vlad goes in the first?
I don't know. That's a good question, though. What's up with us?
Like I honestly I wrote this comment and then I went to go look and move Kyle Schwarber up, and I'm like, where am I going to move him to? Like, who do I actually want him over that I haven't already ranked him over? And I'm like, well, I can move him over a few guys, but like, I'm not sticking him in the Curios and the Carols of the world.
I know, right? I know.
But he should be like, he earns it year after year. He gets the power. He has all the counting numbers. The average is obviously a drain, but you can find that. You can find average to make up for what he's doing. It just feels like I should be higher on him, but I'm not.
Yeah, I know. And in fairness to us, which everyone should be, I looked on the auction values for Steamer rankings, which is aka Rudy's rankings, the auction values, and he's at like 85 overall there. So I mean, that's not great. That's 80. He's actually at 86 overall. Yeah, which is I don't know who is Schwarber is. He is right around right above Cody Bellinger, but the same auction price as Cody Bellinger, $15, and that's a 12 team. So yeah, I don't know. My big issue. So I was way out on Schwarber last year. Even writing a Schmohawk post, and I felt like he just couldn't hit a good enough average to make his fantasy value really worthwhile. And obviously, I mean, he proved me way wrong last year. There's no doubt about that. He was able to hit 248, which I didn't really think was possible for him anymore after he hit 197 in 2023 and then 218 the year before. I mean, he kind of looked like he was going the wrong way. I was expecting him to hit 185 last year. And then, he blew that away. So I don't know. I mean, I don't love the profile is really like his launch angle wasn't really that high. And his homer per fly ball was insanely high. So it's like at a certain point, like the ground balls keep going up and the homer per fly ball stays the same. But at a certain point, like if you're not hitting fly balls, if you're Kyle Schwarber and you're not hitting fly balls, it's a bit of a worry. Like his numbers, his peripherals don't really scream like a guy who should be doing better each year. But yeah, I mean, he is very consistent. Like, I don't know. I mean, he could be like, like the hitting version of like Seth Lugo, where, by that I mean like a player who you look at his numbers and he probably shouldn't be that good. And then every year he puts up like a 3.3 ERA, and you're like, yeah, Seth Lugo's good. Why is he going at like 200 overall? He just was the sixth best starter in baseball. So it's like Schwarber is similar in like he shouldn't be as good as he is, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned where he was ranked for the last couple of years. I mean, it's undeniable how good he has been, considering how poorly we're ranking him consistently.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really want to move him up because of the numbers. Where
I know it exactly. It's like and where would you move him? Like, I wouldn't move him above any of the guys I have above him. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe right. He's in the same tier for me.
I mean, I'd move him over Reynolds just because, that's just one I would do, just naturally happening.
Yeah,
I'd move him over Bellinger and Teoscar.
Right. I hear that complaint, but you look at Brian Reynolds, who's like a 275 hitter for his career, and then you look at Schwarber, and he's 1 year removed from hitting 197. He has bad ground balls. He's a power hitter with bad ground balls, and it's like at some point it feels like Kyle Schwarber is going to be a 180 hitter, and like I don't want to be on that. I don't want to be playing musical chairs with on the Titanic here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, as long as he hits 40, I don't really care. Again, when he hit 198, he was still 31st on the hitter player rater, Gray. So
I know,
it's a big difference. Don't get me wrong. 198 versus 248, which is what he did last year, is a huge gap, and that's why he was 12th on the player rater last year. But like the home runs, the counting numbers, he stays atop of that lineup no matter what. It doesn't like they won't move him out of the top of the lineup because of his on base. So it just feels so safe. I don't know. I understand it's not like we're not getting a 30 season out of him. That's never happening. But again, the numbers are what they are. Regardless, let's move on. We've talked plenty about Kyle Schwarber. Moving on to the next tier. 28, Ian Happ, former teammate of Kyle Schwarber. Last year had 25 runs, 13 stolen bases, 89, 86. You have projected for 24 runs, 12 stolen bases, 86, 69, and 247. 53rd in barrel rate, 61st in average exit velocity, 64th in hard hit. I have a question, Gray. Does he just sit atop your queue for like 2 rounds every draft as well? Because that's what happens to me. And then I eventually take him because nobody wants him.
You mentioned, I mean, it's not quite as dramatic as Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber was 17th on the player rater last year when you include pitchers. Ian Happ was 60th on the player rater last year. If you were to draft Ian Happ at 60 overall, people would think you absolutely have lost your mind.
They think we're Looney Tunes.
They would think you were so crazy. And you would be crazy, but I mean, you wouldn't be totally incorrect. I mean, it would be a little crazy because you could get him 4 or 5 rounds later. So there is that. Like, you should wait because you can get them. You can get them later. Like, you don't have to jump on it. But I mean, he was valuable last year. Like, it's like this whole Schwarber and Happ, they both have that going for them. It's like they not only were used to be teammates, but they both were very valuable last year, and they are not being drafted anywhere near how valuable they were. Ian Happ, for me, to answer your original question, he sits at the top of my queue probably for like 5 rounds. And I'm like, but then the thing is, though, which I'm sure everyone is like this, the thing is, someone will finally draft him, and I'll be like, oh man, I was gonna take him. Like,
I was gonna take him this round. I was finally gonna take him. Why'd you snipe me?
Yeah. Oh man, I can't believe it. Oh shucks, you took him right out from underneath me.
Exactly what happens with Ian Happ every single time. But yeah, I mean, I like Ian Happ. I draft him. I'll draft him, happily. But like you said, like he'll sit there at the top of the queue because you're like, it's too early. Like I can't take him here. Why would I take him when Santander is still sitting around? Who's gonna hit me 40 home runs, or like Kyle Schwarber, top 20 Kyle Schwarber is still sitting around. Why am I gonna take Ian Happ? It's like, well, at some point he is really good value. Speaking of somebody who's not been a good value, number 29, Mike Trout. Oh, I really want him to stay healthy, Gray. Last year he had 29 games. He had 10 home runs, 6 stolen bases, and hit 220 in those 29 games. You have projected for 21 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 48, 57, 265. Is there a Chris Sale season left in him? Can we get a random, just full good last season of Mike Trout?
I like how the news out of Anaheim is saying that they're gonna move him to left field and out of center to try and keep him healthy. Like that was the reason why he was being injured every third game. Yeah, it was all his center field play. That's what was keeping him down. Don't you know?
Also, why did we come to think of this I don't know, 5 years ago when all the injuries started to pile up? I don't know, maybe longer, like 8 years ago.
That's a good point too. Like, well, it's good you're moving out of center, but why didn't you do that in 2019?
Yeah, why didn't you do that in 2017 when he had his first kind of major issue? And you're like, he's the franchise player. We've paid him since till like 2055. Maybe we should take care of him.
It makes too much sense, man. Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway because I'm a terrible person. But I really wish Mike Trout, and actually all the players who I don't want to draft, I really wish they would have incredibly great spring trainings. Because you can count on like Louis. Right now, Louis Robert had just hit his like 3rd homer in like 2 days. It's like nothing. You can't count. It's like one thing you can count on more than anything else in this world, that if a guy has a good spring training, people are like, move him up the boards. Here we go. It's like, yeah, I'm drafting him. Let's go. He just had his 3rd homer in 2 games in March. That sounds amazing. Wow. Yeah. Mike Trout, I think there's probably like I have him down for a 21-5 season, 21 homers, 5 steals. I feel like that feels fair. I think it depends on the league. If you're in a shallow enough league where you can gamble on Mike Trout playing for 100 games and giving you 20 plus homers and a 260 average in like 100 games, that's fine. If it's a shallow enough league where you can then just grab a guy off of waivers to replace him when he gets injured, I don't mind it there. In deeper leagues, you're gonna you think you're getting one thing, which is you think you're getting a potential star in a deeper league, but in reality is you're getting a guy who's going to be healthy on Monday. Your league's going to lock, and on Wednesday he's going to be out for 3 days. Then on Sunday you're going to be like, you know what? he's supposed to be healthy for this week. I'm going to put him back in. And then he plays one game and he's out for 5 days. And then he's going to get to Sunday again. You're going to be like, I'm not falling for it this time. So you bench him. And that week he goes off and has a 7-homer week. I'm just saying, this is what's going to happen to you in a deeper league. But in a shallower league where you can do a daily lineup change, then it's fine.
Yeah. Yes. Everything you said, Gray, I agree. There's it just depends on how much you want to gamble. I mean, that's where we're at on Mike Trout. I don't question that he still can hit the ball at all. Just if he can stay on the field. Number 30, Pete Crow-Armstrong, 123 games last year. 10 home runs, 27 stolen bases, 46, 47, 237, 286, and 384. You have him down for 14 home runs, 30 stolen bases, 59, 66, and 248. He had a 23.9% K rate, 5.1% walk rate. In the first half, he hit 203 with 3 home runs and 17 stolen bases. In the second half, he hit 262 with 7 home runs and 10 stolen bases, and the K rate dropped 3.5%. I love me some Pete Crow-Armstrong, and if I need speed as we're getting later in the draft, he is often one of my targets, Gray.
Yeah, actually, in my LABR league that I won last year, did I mention I won this? I drafted Pete Crow-Armstrong for free on the bench as my last bench guy. And I think I ended up actually holding him for most of the year, which is rare for a 12-team mixed league bench hitter. But yeah, I mean, he was good. And also, I feel like this year he could he screams to me as a guy who could be a league winner. And by which I mean, like, you're going to draft him at a really nice discount for what he's capable of doing. I think he's capable of like a 20 homer, 40 steal season. Like, I think he's capable of like a young Ronald Acuna Jr. year. Like, I know that sounds nuts, but I think he's capable of that. It's just a matter of whether or not he runs. And, even his projections are really good considering no one ever gives young players good projections. The fact that like Steamer has him down for a 15, 26, 244 year in only 130 games. You bump those stats up to 150 plus games, and you're looking at 32-ish, 20 homers, 32 steals. And that feels easy. I really like Pete Crow-Armstrong a lot. I think he's capable of winning people leagues. Like, I would be aggressively drafting him.
Yeah, and there's some leagues where he goes, kind of where I have him or at ADP, and there's some leagues where he just falls, and I just kind of like wait and see where he goes and falls to, just so I have an idea. A lot of the drafts I've done have been mocks, so you just kind of wait and see how long you can wait. And I've seen him go after 200. If you can get him after 200, you are just stealing from your league. Number 31 is Jason Dominguez. Last year in AAA, he had 44 games. He had 7 home runs, 15 stolen bases, 309, 368, and 480. He had 18 games up the majors. He had 2 home runs, 5 stolen bases at 179. This year, you have projected for 26 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 68, 76, and 232. I mean, the Yankees lineup, other than Judge at 2, could go anywhere. It seems like Jazz may lead off versus righties, Jason or Volpe versus lefties, but regardless, Jason Dominguez has a lot of tools here, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. I think I might be overreacting to some of the spring training news here. The fact that he can't seem to field his position whatsoever. That's at least things get a little bit blown out of proportion when it comes to the Yankees. So that might be nothing. He may be totally fine when it comes to defense, but I'm more concerned about him today than I was like a month ago, just because like the Aaron Boone and the Yankees really struggle to play their young players sometimes. Like they're guys like we've been waiting for Oswaldo Cabrera to play for like 4 years now. Like it's just like I don't know if they're really willing to sacrifice defense. Now he could move to DH a bit. And then Giancarlo comes back and he moves back to the outfield. Like it's a bit of a fluid situation. And like you said with the lineup, like I think Dominguez is penciled in, but if he fell into some sort of weird platoon because of his defense, or even got pulled from games later on because defensive replacements, like there's a lot of like little moving parts here with Dominguez that I didn't think were an issue like a month ago. But with all that said, I do like Dominguez, and I would draft him where he's going in ADP, which is I think around like 120 overall. So I'm in. I'm just like I have more concerns today than I did a few weeks ago, and maybe those are unwarranted, and he'll be fine, and he'll play every day, and there won't be an issue. But he came up, when was it? 2023. Like obviously he had the injury. But we didn't really, like the fact that he didn't really do much of anything last year, and it was, I don't know. I hope, I hope he isn't just yet another Yankee prospect who flames out, because we've seen quite a few of those. Miguel Andujar. Excuse me. I hope everything's fine with Jason Dominguez. His tools are very loud, so I'm assuming everything will be good. Like he is, like I could see easily the case being made that he is as good as he's basically James Wood or Wyatt Langford, but like 50, 60 picks later. I could see that case being made. So I'm not totally against Jason Dominguez. I like him. I'm just a little bit just tamping the enthusiasm down just a little bit.
Yeah, there's no tamping my enthusiasm down, Gray. I'm gonna just take the shot on Jason Dominguez. The tools, like we said, the tools are so loud. I actually think that the Yankees are fully ready at this point to give him a shot at this. And it's not like they have some defensive like guru for the outfield sitting on their bench. Like Trent Grisham is not a defensive upgrade for anything. There's really not. They don't have just depth to run people in and just shuffle him out. So I think he's going to get a lot of leeway here to kind of figure things out. And it was just like, it was the first play of spring training. And yes, he should have caught a very easy fly ball. But again, first play of spring, his first defensive play of spring training. I'm not worried about it. Nothing has come really out since then. I think at this point, my concern is more like, where is he in the lineup than anything else. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly some potential for miss. I love the upside here. I love it more than our next guy, who actually did produce a little bit at the major league level last year, and that is Dylan Cruz at 32. 100 games at AAA. He had 13 home runs, 25 stolen bases, and hit 270, 342, 451. And then in the majors, he had 3 home runs, 12 stolen bases, hit 218, 288, and 453. He had a 19.7% K rate and 8.3% walk rate. You have him down for 16 home runs, 26 stolen bases, 72, 67, and 258. The contact quality numbers were fine. The 57.5% ground ball and 10.5% line drive are not ideal, but really small sample size on all the numbers. As with everybody in Washington, he was allowed to run. He had 28 singles or walks, Gray, and 11 stolen bases out of those 28 singles or walks. He stole third base once. I like Dylan Cruz. I think he's going to be good for fantasy purposes. He's going to run a lot. I did trade him in the podcast Dynasty League, so I hope I didn't screw that up really bad.
Yeah, no, I think you might have. I like Dylan Cruz as well. I think probably the power is just the power is just also great, but it might be a tad behind Dominguez, but the speed could be making up for it. They were kind of like, I think I mentioned this during my rookie write-ups in November of last year. I was saying, like, there's not really a clear-cut number one prospect this year, like in years past. Like, I think everyone assumed it was Wyatt Langford, going into last year. It didn't end up being that way, but everyone assumed it was. And then Churio was a late ad because the Brewers decided to let him break camp. Anyway, Cruz and Dominguez, I think, are they're the top prospects going into this year, and they're really like 1A, 1B. I don't feel a huge difference, like if for fantasy at least. Like I said, I think Dominguez's power might be a little bit more developed at this point, but Cruz does have power. Cruz has a lot of speed. Like you mentioned, 12 steals in only 31 games, 12 steals off of only 28 singles or walks. I mean, that's crazy. So if he gets on 150 times doing rough math, he's going to steal 130 bags. I really like Dylan Cruz. The fact that the Nationals just let everyone run, as long as they keep doing that, I think we're in really good place. I wonder a little bit about the, hard contact wasn't great last year for Cruz. It was a silly small sample size, though, so I don't think there's anything really to be concerned. He's crazy young. He just turned 23 in February. I think he could be upside wise. I mean, I don't know, 20 plus homers, 30 plus bags. That feels kind of realistic even. I mean, he could be really good. I'm a huge fan. I don't know. I like Dylan Cruz a lot. I think I have Dominguez above him just because I think Dominguez is just a little bit, the tools are just a little bit louder, just a hair louder. And I also think the lineup is better, and there's a chance for him to move up in that lineup. And even if Dylan Cruz is hitting high in the Nationals lineup, I mean, who's hitting behind him? Nathaniel Lowe. It's like, who cares? but Dylan Cruz is just, I mean, he's also excellent. Absolutely, I'm a fan. So yeah, I'd draft him.
Yeah, I would draft him too. I think you like him a little bit more than I do. But yeah, I mean, he's still great. Don't let the fact that I traded him sway you in any way, shape, or form. I was just grabbing pieces I needed. Number 33, Julio Ramos. Last year in 121 games, he had 20 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 54, 72 hit, 269, 322 and 469. You're on project for 26 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 79, 78 and 266. He is dealing with an oblique right now, and they're saying he might be ready for opening day. He might not. He was 20th in barrel rate, 37th in both average exit velocity and hard hit. Did hit 298 versus 242 first half to second half, which is not great, but he also had a thumb issue at the end of July. Before that was when he was hitting the 298. So you can kind of write the narrative as to what happened, but what do you think about Julio Ramos?
I wrote a sleeper post for him, so I absolutely love him as well. I like this Actually, I like all outfielders. I feel like
just all outfielders. Get rid of
I
positions.
feel like we haven't gotten
completely.
to an outfielder yet that I don't like, but we're getting close to an outfielder.
Brian Reynolds.
Michael Harris II. We're getting close, and we haven't gotten there yet, but we're getting close.
Yeah,
to
you do hate him. You've always hated him. That's okay.
I do dislike him. Helio Ramos. You mentioned 242 in the second half, but he had a thumb issue. 298 in the first. He hit 370 versus lefties, 240 versus righties. I guess there could be some splits issues, but I mean, he hit the ball so hard, so many barreled up everything. I believe it was basically like the top 15 in all of baseball for barrels per plate appearance percentage. Like the Aaron Judge, the Ohtani, the Bobby Witt, like the top of the top guys. And then Helio Ramos was in there. It was like, and that, like, when I was going through for looking to see who to write up for sleepers, I was going through barrels, and I was like, okay, so it was like Helio Ramos and Austin Riley, Marcelo Ozuna, Fernando Tatis, and Brent Rooker. Like Helio Ramos was so good last year in in 121 games, which is enough of a sample size. Like I'm not worried about him getting exposed. I think in the second half, him coming down a little bit, that was mostly the thumb related, but even if it was him getting a little bit exposed, I mean, it wasn't that bad. If he's a 255 hitter versus 270, okay, I'm fine with it. I don't think it is. I mean, I have him projected for 266, but he's got, in 121 games, he hit 22 homers and stole 6 bags as a rookie. Like that's like, if that's the floor, give it to me all day, man. I'm taking that, and I'm expecting a little bit more across the board for him. Like, 27, 10, 26, 10, 265. Absolutely. I'm taking that all day, especially where he's being drafted. So yeah, I like Helio Ramos a lot.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you're looking at a slightly more risky, like Brian Reynolds with upside still left there. So yeah, really not really like Helio Ramos. Number 34 is Colton Cowser. Last year had 24 home runs, 9 stolen bases, 77, 69, hit 242, 321, 447. You have him down for 27 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 74, 82, and a 234 average. 30.7% K rate, 9.3% walk rate, 25th in barrels, 55th in hard hit, and 68th in average exit velocity. So hit the ball very hard. 219 in the first half versus 267 in the second half. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. Just depends how you look at it. The underlying numbers really didn't look that much different between the two. Just kind of a little bit of just BABIP luck and things falling the right way. Maybe he got a little oppo heavy, but I like Colton Cowser. If he can kind of continue what he was doing in the second half, there's room for growth here.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, I mean, he's just yet another guy who is like a 25 homer, 10 steal, 240 hitter with in his his rookie year. Basically, if that's the floor, give me the floor, man. I'll take it. I'll take the floor, and I'll expect a little bit more. As I just said, I just made up that saying. Yeah, I mean, he's I think where's he going in ADP? He's like 160 overall. I mean, I don't know. I probably have him at like 120. I'm drafting him aggressively as long as he's in the middle of the Orioles lineup. And last year he was also 153 games. So it's like, maybe he gets subbed out occasionally when a lefty comes into the game, but rarely. That was his rookie year, and he was in 153 games. So it's like, if he's already a lefty and he's playing every day and he goes 24-9, 242, yeah, I mean, that's easy. that's an easy draft pick right there. I mean, I'm absolutely taking that all day. Like if that is like, if he's there, he was at 115 on the player rater last year as a rookie, 115 overall, and he's getting drafted at, what did I say, 150? So it's like he was already better on the player rater than he is being drafted at. So it's like that's easy draft pick. I mean, that's like you look at that and you see him at 130, draft him all day long and take it to the bank, baby. To the bank.
To the bank, absolutely, Gray. Let's move on to the next tier, number 35. Starting with Michael Harris.
The guys I don't like. Finally.
Starting with Michael Harris II, 110 games. He had 16 home runs, 10 stolen bases, 58, 48, hit 264, 304, 418. Young projected for 18 home runs, 18 stolen bases, 74, 62, and a 282 average. Still waiting on that full healthy season to go 25. Gray. I mean, we don't really know where he's going to fit in the lineup. We don't really know how Atlanta's lineup is going to work in general. But other than that, why do you hate Michael Harris II?
I'll give it. I'm gonna put that on a dish and serve it back to you. Ready? Why would you, if you saw a guy who gave you 16 homers and 10 steals and a 264 average in 110 games, would you look at that and be like, I like that. I want more of that. I mean, that is basically, he had 440 at bats. It wasn't like it was this incredibly small sample size where he hit 16 homers and stole 10 bags. It was like, he was on pace for pretty much what he does every year, which is just under a 2020 year with, a lot less counting stats than anyone ever anticipates because he doesn't stay on the field. So I don't know, man. I honestly, I don't know what the attraction is for Michael Harris II. Like if I saw 1 year where he did go, 25 and hit 290, I'd be like, oh, okay, I get it now. He has never even come close to that over the course of a full season. Like it's not even like he was like, it's not even like I'm cherry picking numbers. Like he's got 3 seasons now where he's never even come close to what people expect from him. So yeah, I can't get in on Michael Harris II at all. I've never, to be fair, I've never been in on him, even when he's been kind of good. So I've been wrong once and been right twice for Michael Harris II. I think if I remember,
you've been wrong twice and right once, but hey, I mean, he's already basically gone 2020. Like that's the baseline. I mean,
he's never
I think you just look at the tools and say, hey, if he stays on the field, it's 25. He just needs to stay on the damn field. I will say he's going higher than I like him, but I like him considerably more than you like him. So while you are definitely the bottom point, I'm more of the middle ground. And then ADP actually has him as a top 20 outfielder going 16th or 17th off the board.
Nuts.
That's a little crazy to me. I mean, when you
I'm
got
sorry.
Brent Rooker still sitting around, when you got Kyle Schwarber, we talked about his player rater numbers still sitting around, Doyle and Butler who did that and more last year already. Like that's where it gets a little off for me.
People are looking at Teoscar Hernandez and Michael Harris II. Not exactly comparable stats, but let's just say for fantasy, people are looking at those two guys and they're saying Michael Harris II literally every single time. That's crazy, dude. That's nuts. When Teoscar just sits in the middle of an incredible lineup and plays 150 games and gives you great power and counting stats and a solid average, and he even chucked in, what would we say, 12 steals last year, which is more than Michael Harris II. But even if the steals aside, and if you want a more comparable player, people are looking at Michael Harris II and James Wood, and they're being like Michael Harris II every single time, which is crazy to me. That's crazy. I mean, they're looking at Lawrence Butler, you mentioned. I mean, they're looking at every single. I mean, I'm not going to go through every single outfielder. They're looking at basically all but 13 outfielders and saying Michael Harris II over all these other guys, which is so nuts. That's I don't know, man. That's crazy to me. But anyway.
Look, if he goes 25, 295, and has 90 runs, 90 RBIs, sure. I don't think he has those counting numbers just because of the way the Braves lineup is going to be constructed. Other than that, though, I actually think those numbers are possible. That being, I just don't see, like, he never plays, though, which is why I have him down in my rankings. And again, just we've talked about it. We've talked about all the guys above him. Let's just move on, Gray. We're probably not going to have a lot of Michael Harris II on our teams, unfortunately, even though I like him and you hate him. Number 36, Christian Yelich. Last year in 73 games, had 11 home runs, 21 stolen bases, 44-42, hit 315, 406, 504. You have him down for 13 home runs, 22 stolen bases, 68, 63, 281, and 461 at bats. He did have the best K rate of his career, but he also had the worst walk rate since 2018, worst hard hit since 2017. Still a 55% ground ball hitter. Sprint speed was actually the best since 2019, so there's a little bit of an upside there, Gray. I mean, I get why people like Christian Yelich. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think Christian Yelich is he is a great person to look at for like the issue with like expecting people's launch angle to change. Like there's no better example of a guy who like he could have been like what he did his MVP year of 2019. Like obviously the ball was bouncing. Was he the MVP there? Anyway, the ball was bouncing in 2019, obviously, but his launch angle was up. I mean, he wasn't grounding everything into, he wasn't hitting everything into the ground that year. But every other year, it's just like, it's the same story with him. And also the bad back just makes him, hard to rely on for more than, I want to say maybe more than Mike Trout, but barely, like maybe 120 games is a realistic expectation for him, which puts him, down for roughly 15 homers, 20 steals, should hit for a good average. But, at some point, the ground balls and a guy getting older, if his sprint speed starts, if he starts slowing down, and he's hitting the ball into the ground, it's not a good recipe for aging well. So, yeah, I can't get behind the bounce back. Unfortunately, I wish him well, but I doubt I'm drafting Christian Yelich anywhere.
Yeah, it sounds like I like him a little bit more than you do. I have him a few spots higher than you do, and I think even if it gives you 100 games, they've still been quality production when he's there. So if you give me, 15 and 100 games, then I can go find another player and replace him and still kind of turn him in. I'm not going to go crazy and think he's going to play 160 and move him up into my top 10 or anything like that. But I don't mind Christian Yelich, later in the draft if he falls to the right area. You mentioned Mike Trout. And I didn't really mention this when we talked about Trout. I buried Mike Trout in my rankings. I'm kind of done waiting for him to have that season. And I have Yelich considerably higher than him, but really just because like we've seen Yelich still run. We've seen him more recently play 140 games. And by that I mean he's done it in this decade, unlike Mike Trout. So, I have Yelich over Trout, but it is kind of the same where you're just hoping for like magic fairy dust to hit them in reverse aging.
I will, I'll say this with like Yelich versus like, Mike Trout and him are close to each other in ADP. But like, if you look at, Stephen Kwan, and a guy who we haven't gone over yet, but he's going like 2 rounds later. He's in the middle of his peak. He is probably a little bit less power than Yelich, even with Yelich's injuries. Probably more like Kwan's more like 7-ish homers, and Yelich is more like 12. But they have similar speed. Kwan should hit for a similar average to Yelich, and he stays on the field, so you have the runs that come with that. And he's going later than Yelich, so I feel like Yelich's ADP is more based on some sort of bounce back or him finally staying on the field, which I mean, it's like, even if a guy is healthy in spring training, which Yelich isn't even healthy right now, as we record this, he's had injury issues even in spring training. But even if he's healthy in the spring, it doesn't mean he's going to be healthy by May or June. I mean, the season, it's a 6-month season. It gets, people get banged up all the time. Yelich is still only 120. He's still only going to play 120 games. So, I mean, I guess it depends on how deep the league is. If it's a shallow enough league and you can replace him off of waivers, then fine. Yelich is fine. I don't really hate it there. But in a deeper league, Yelich is just like, it's going to be another nightmare where it's like what I described with Mike Trout. It's like, oh, yeah, he's healthy on Monday. You put him in your weekly lineup. On Wednesday, he's out. And then it's like, oh, God, I hate him.
Yeah, I will say this for Yelich. As recently as the last 2 years, so 23, 22, he played 144 and 154 games. So we're not talking about a Mike Trout situation where it hasn't happened in a decade. It happened 2 years ago. I agree that, the back's probably not going to allow him to do that again. But it's more realistic to me to think that the Yelich is going to put together than, again, Mike Trout or some of the others. So I understand why he goes higher, but I'm not drafting him where he's going either. I don't think either of us are drafting him. He's going like right around 100. That seems a little excessive, y'all. Number 37 for you, Randy Arozarena. Last year had 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 77-60, hit 219, 332, 388. You have him down for 19 home runs, 24 stolen bases, 72, 74, and 225. I just want to throw this out there. It has nothing to do with our game, but he still has a year of arbitration left after this season. That's crazy, Gray.
Man, the Tampa Bay Rays are just the worst, man.
They're just the absolute worst.
That is so obnoxious. Like, he should be like already in his second contract. Like, that's just ridiculous. I mean, come on, man. Like, come on.
It's pretty awful. Speaking of awful, he was awful to start the year last year. Really awful. He got together and played really well for a couple months, got traded, and then played okay for Seattle. In Seattle, he had 54 games, 5 home runs, 4 stolen bases, hit 231, 356, 377. Did have 10 caught stealings to 20 stolen bases. That's kind of what he does. He always gets caught. What's your thoughts on Arozarena here?
Yeah, I just feel like Seattle is just like, it's almost as bad as Detroit. Like, you put a guy in Seattle like Arozarena, and he might hit 15 homers this year. Like, it's just such a terrible park. It's not. I mean, you mentioned that 54 games he hit 5 homers for the Mariners. Like, not to be Mr. Pro Raider here, but I mean, 15 homers isn't too far off of that. So yeah, I can't get in on Randy Arozarena either. I just feel like it's, he's too young for the bottom to completely drop out, but Seattle is not going to help him. So maybe you get a 17 homer, 22 steal, 245 year, which, is okay. It's better than he was last year, for average at least. But I can't buy into a bounce back for him.
Yeah, and I mean, Seattle kind of let him run a little bit last year, but they're not really a team that runs a ton. They were 11th in stolen bases, but a lot of that was Dylan Moore and Robles. So it kind of feels like you either have a green light or you're mostly getting the red light in Seattle. And I don't know if he's getting caught one out of every one time he gets a stolen base, if they're going to let him keep doing that. So yeah, he's fine if you want to take a shot. I don't love him either, Gray. Number 38, Adolis Garcia, formerly our boy Gray. Last year had 25 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 68, 85, 224, 284, 400. Young projected for 27 runs, 10 stolen bases, 71, 84, 218. The underlying numbers were down a little from 23, but in line with what he's done. But the home run and fly ball was the lowest he's had since he joined the majors. What are your thoughts on Adolis? He did struggle with like a forearm thing in the middle of the season and then kept playing. He's supposedly reworking his swing in the offseason.
Oh God, kiss of death. I didn't hear that. Oh man. That usually leads to one thing, and that's in June he says, I'm gonna go back to what I was doing before.
Go back to the thing that was working.
Oh man, don't rework your swing. Get younger. Go into the Waybank machine and get younger. That's what you need to do. Oh man, it's another unfortunate scenario where he is just like, he is way too old to be like 32, and he's only played 600 career games. It's crazy. Yeah, I feel like he's like the reason why you don't get in on, like, you got to be careful when a guy relies so much on fly balls as he gets older, and the BABIP drops, and then the average drops, and the homers eventually drop because the bat speed is just not good. And yeah, it's just not great. Adolis, I loved Adolis Garcia for like 3 years there. I was his biggest supporter. I loved him, but I'm not in it anymore, unfortunately. I can't go near him. I feel like last year was the beginning of the end.
Yeah, I unfortunately am not a huge Adolis Garcia fan either this year, because we were his supporter for a long time. I could see him having, like I said, the numbers were pretty much what he's been doing. So I'm not saying that like the drop is officially happened, but it feels like it's coming, Gray. The speed's definitely down a little bit. That was already very apparent from 23, but yeah, I mean, once it goes, the power goes. I don't know if there's a whole lot here. If he's not hitting 30 home runs, the average is it's harder to eat that. Mm-hmm. Number 39, Luis Robert Jr., LRJ, Lou Bob, 100 games last year, 14 home runs, 23 stolen bases, 47, 35, 224, 278, 379. He's projected, or you have him projected for 20 home runs, 25 stolen bases, 68, 58, and a 233 average. He had a 33.2% K rate, which is the worst of his career, 6.6% walk rate, which isn't great, but the best since his first call up. He had a hip flexor strain at the start of the season, a minor hamstring, rib issue in September, or maybe he just don't want to play for the White Sox anymore. That's also a good injury excuse as well. I feel like last year everybody was like, oh, he's going to be healthy. And I said, no, not so fast. No, not so fast, Gray. He still misses a lot of games. That being said, it seems like we're both out on it on Lou Bob.
Yeah, no, I'm nowhere near. I like I mentioned earlier, I mean, he's been hitting, as we record this, he just hit like another 2 homers in spring training. And I say, go with God, man. Keep hitting homers. Keep hit 700 with 30 homers in spring training, please. Just do it. Do whatever you can to be the best you can during spring training, Lou Bob, because I am so not drafting you. I'm not anywhere near. I can't, honestly though. Like, I see ADP, and I feel like you and I are the odd ones here, because like people are still drafting them like last year didn't happen. he's going in like around 70 overall in some drafts, and it's like, wow, what?
It's not even just last year, Gray. It's literally his whole career, other than 2023. Like,
it's so bad. I mean, last year was so horrendous. Like he had a 310 BABIP and hit 224, and his strikeouts skyrocketed. You mentioned that maybe he doesn't want to play for the White Sox, and I don't begrudge him that. I wouldn't want to play for the White Sox either. But unfortunately, guess who he plays for? The White Sox. And they're still not going to be good. Like, you may be like, well, there's a chance he could, knock in Mike Tuckman and Corey Lee, but I don't think that's happening. I don't think. And then on the other side of his, I don't think Josh Rojas is going to be knocking him in either. So if, he has 130 games and only has like 60 runs and 55 RBIs, it's really bad. Like that, I know, runs and RBIs can be fickle, but that alone should have you second guessing where you're drafting Louis Robert, because runs and RBIs that bad, he's gonna have to do so much work on power and speed to come anywhere close to like anything nearing his ADP. And also the fact that he's coming off of such a horrendous year with all those strikeouts, and I don't blame him. Like, he's swinging because he wants to do something, giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's trying to do something. Unfortunately, pitchers aren't throwing him strikes because there's no one else in the lineup. Why would you throw him a strike? It would be like, that would be insanity to be like, I can face Louis Robert or Josh Rojas. Let me think about that. No, I'm not facing Louis Robert. No, you're going to swing at balls in the dirt, Louis Robert. And unfortunately, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even like, we go to the play rater, dollar per game, and I meant to kind of bring this up with Yelich. Dollar per game, Yelich was the 34th player on the play rater, dollar per game. Now it's obviously not ideal because it's, it's per game. Louis Robert, Lou Bob, he is a 249th grade on per game. Like the thing that you could hang your hat on, Lou Bob, like, okay, but when he plays, he's really talented, guys. No, like last year he wasn't even that. I think 130 is even giving him the benefit of doubt, considering he's done that once. Just another guy I bury in my rankings because I don't want him. I get that he's a phenomenal talent, but it's not a guy I'm going to have on my teams.
No, like he was around like, I think 350 overall on the player rater last year. Like, it's like, and it wasn't even like, he didn't play a full season, but it wasn't like he was out for that much. He wasn't out that dramatically. Like, looking at his runs and RBIs last year, he had 82 runs and RBIs combined. Some guys, a lot of guys who are going where he's being drafted had that just in runs or just in RBIs. He had that combined. It's awful. And he had almost 400 at bats. It wasn't like, yes, he didn't play the full season, but 400 at bats and 82 runs and RBIs combined. Oh, come on, man. Don't draft him. Please don't do yourself a favor. Don't draft Louis Robert.
Please, just just do it for us.
He had less runs and RBIs combined than Joey Bart, who didn't play for half the year. Joey Bart only had 250 at bats, and he had more runs and RBIs than Louis Robert, and he's a catcher for the Pirates. Come on, man.
Yeah, that's not great, Gray. We had talked about before the show, we were going to get through like we were very ambitious. We're like, we might be able to get to 60 because we've talked about a lot of guys and we can kind of skip over them. Well, we're over 2 hours and we covered 39 guys. So our timing didn't work out great, but I'm not going to continue on. We're going to leave a few exciting names to talk about at the top of the show next time before we get into the part of the outfield that you probably don't want to draft and you want to have filled before then, or at least, have a few of their spots. So we'll be back for part 2 next week, Gray. If you have specific questions in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is the at Razzball account owner. YouTube.com/Razzball Fantasy. You can ask us questions in the comments out there or on Razzball.com. Till next week, Gray. Talk to you later, bud.
All right, late.